So I am representing my fellow brethren and sisters out there who wants a good value, who wants to stay true to our Chinese picky origins, to get the freshest, maybe not the freshest fish in the market, but a damn good value. Jason 2022 for president. Yes, thank you very much.
So, back by popular demand, Jason is joining us officially on Rojak Tech Podcast. Yay!
Woohoo! Yeah.
And we kicked Adam, right? Because his comments on the previous episode of YouTube Premium.
Yeah, we decided, I think, for the longevity of the podcast, we needed somebody whose opinions are not that controversial. So I decided to take over Adam's spot. No, actually, no. Adam is not free for today's recording. It's still very much part of the Rojak Tech podcast.
Yeah. He's focusing on editing our next podcast.
Yep. And also, it's a public holiday in Malaysia, but in Amsterdam today, it's not. Yeah.
Yep.
Scheduling conflict.
So yeah, Apple's September event, the iPhone event. So yeah, we got 4 new iPhones, 2 new iPads, and 1 new Apple Watch. So yeah, initially we want to have our mutual friend Brenda on board because she's planning on getting a new iPhone for herself. So I suppose let's try to make this episode like the one episode that you come and hear your thoughts about whether you should get a new iPhone or not. Like a summarize to help her make the decision.
Mm-hmm. Well, personally, you're the Apple head in this particular episode, Morgan, because I'm not an avid follower of the Apple events, but I'm a bit caught up to speed. I usually just read the summaries, but yeah, I guess this actually really do people really need to opinions whether they should get the new iPhone, the new iPad, a new Apple Watch. Like there's a bajillion opinions on the matter right about now, I would imagine.
I don't know, like the way I want to see is that because both of us are using iPhones, right? And just want to like share our perspective about it, I would say, because the iPhone I'm using right now, it's last year's model, the 12 Pro Max. So it's pretty recent, and I felt like can be a good comparison to this year's model. Which iPhone model you're using?
I'm using the 11, not 11 Pro, just 11, the plain vanilla 11.
All right.
I got mine, can't remember when exactly, not too long after the 11 was announced. I was upgrading from an iPhone 7, so that was a huge upgrade for me. So yeah, 7 Plus actually, a 7 Plus. I was upgrading from a 7 Plus to an iPhone 11. So that was my first time with Face ID. It was my first time with the disappearance of the home screen button. The home button.
You got the purple one, right?
Correct. The lavender. I'm not sure what's the official name for the color, but I got it because it looked very tasty. It looks like Nyonya Kueh. So I'm like, I want this phone because of that. So yeah, that's the only reason why I got the lavender colored iPhone 11.
When I was in your apartment, got a few times I mistaken that the lavender phone was your girlfriend's phone, and turned out to be yours, right?
Why is that, Morgan? Because men can't have purple phones, Morgan. Men can only have white, black. Huh? Is that why, Morgan?
I don't know. I can't imagine you with a lavender phone. I don't know.
But lavender is it's a very subtle. It's just a subtle shade of purple. It's chef's kiss, But no lah, I got it because, well, again, it looks nice. It reminds me of Nyonya Kueh, but also, like the white colored. I think when I was buying the iPhone 11, the white color and black color were out of stock because they're fairly popular. So was the mint green or teal. I'm not sure what's the exact name for the color.
Pandan.
That was out of stock as well.
Pandan color.
The pandan layer cake color, right? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No, the Nyonya Kueh color was in stock, but not the pandan, unfortunately. Yeah.
So yeah, any new surprises that you find for the iPhone announcements?
I think the surprise was that there was no surprise. This is probably the most boring iPhone launch I've ever seen or heard, or yeah, ever. It's so mediocre.
But I would definitely say that this is a S year,
Yes,
right?
I would say if you followed Apple's naming convention throughout like the 7, 8, 10 era, with the 10s, the XS, 10R, S, etc., etc. This would be this year is an S year for Apple, basically. So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense that the changes were very boring and incremental, super incremental.
The battery and the camera improvement.
The camera, okay, it's pretty cool. Aperture 2.8 to 1.8. It's a pretty big deal for photography, avid photographers. It's an entire stop higher, right? So that's pretty good. But I don't know if you want to talk about the camera first. I guess we can, because on not just the aperture had a bump, but they also have the what's they call it, the cinematic mode, right?
Yep.
And I'm confused. So cinematic mode,
So,
yeah, you go ahead.
right.
I think you would probably be able to explain it much better than I would.
So, what Jason meant by cinematic mode is that, do you know that it's actually kind of like a filmmaking technique where you can have like a focus racking. So, which means that you can have different focus in the foreground or in the background. So, what Apple is trying to do with this cinematic mode is try to intelligently stage your videos better. And I would say that for this year iPhone 13 releases, there's been a lot of focus on the video capturing alone. And I think that in terms of video capturing on the smartphone, I think Apple has been quite far ahead. And this is just them flexing their muscles, I would say, because they got support formats like ProRes. They kind of push it. Like, have you watched the short film that they made? The one that kind of looked like a Knives Out imitation. Has a lot of whodunit vibes into it. Quite a fun short film.
No, I have not. I have not watched the Knives Out imitation.
Yeah, for the short film, they kind of like have I would say, a lot of people in the frame together, but somehow the cinematic mode is able to detect, like, for example, when someone is staring into the lens or looking away, maybe perhaps like looking at, for example, when a person is looking at a photo frame and the photo frame becomes in focus, although the photo frame is in the background. And and the short film really illustrates that really well, I would say. So this is like doing a lot of work, like how to say, to make home videos look very professional, I would say. And the surprising thing is that they actually have this on the normal iPhone 13 and iPhone 13 mini. So it's not a Pro Max or the Pro exclusive feature. I think one thing I want to talk about it's actually quite surprised me is that they still have the iPhone 13 mini for this year. I was actually contemplating last year whether should I go with the smaller phone or a bigger phone. So because last year iPhone 12 Pro Max has that sensor shift in the camera, hence I go with the bigger phone. And it's like a 6.7-inch for the screen. And it's been a year and I started to appreciate smaller phones right now.
I see. So you're saying that it's not exactly ergonomically friendly for you to actually use the 12 Pro Max, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And the weird thing is that I have a big ass hand.
Yeah, you mean you are a big ass person, Morgan. You are what,
Yeah.
187 centimeters? So yeah.
A phone of this size should be made for me, right? I'm the one that should feel comfortable with this form factor, right? But it just feels very bulky. But of course, at the same time, I appreciate the camera features and the battery. And I wouldn't mind giving the mini a try one day. I think last year what was the deal breaker for the mini was that it didn't have all the camera features, the sensor shift feature, and I think that was the one that tipped me over to
I see.
get the Pro instead.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Apple probably,
Yeah.
and that's probably the reason why they, as you mentioned, the Mini this year has feature parity with at least most of the feature parity with the big boys, right? It's probably to drive the sales of the Mini, and we know Apple's. It's a bit off tangent, but like, especially Tim Cook. Tim Cook is the king of supply chain. He squeezes as much out of a product lineup for as long as possible. That is so probably their decision to keep on with the Mini is because they have leftover stock from last year's Mini for manufacturing and repurpose it for this year's manufacturing. And you know, if they notice that, oh, the Mini is not doing very well, boom, next year is probably gone, probably cut off from the lineup.
If I'm getting an iPhone this year, the iPhone 13 mini is gonna be a strong contender. Not sure whether you know though. Adam is actually quite excited to get the mini.
Really?
Yeah. Like last year when I was talking with him about the iPhone 12 mini, right? He said something about if he is switching iPhones that year, he would definitely get the mini because he felt like the mini is gonna be like iPhone SE, where they change every 5 years or longer, and this is like his chance to hop on board the new mini. That's why it will be interesting to hear his thoughts about whether will he be changing to iPhone 13 mini this year.
That's okay. Okay, that's interesting. But I believe he has an 11, right? Or
No, he's using the 10.
using a 10. I see. Okay, then yeah, he's probably
Yeah.
right for an upgrade anytime soon. So yeah.
So my questions to you, right? If you are changing iPhone this year, which size would you go with? Would you go with the mini, or would you go with the iPhone 13, the normal one, or would you go with the Pro or the Max?
Right. I actually do not know the difference between the 13 and the 13 Pro. I would definitely never go for the Max. Max is way too big for my. I had the, like I mentioned, one of my previous phone was a
All
7
right.
Plus, and I did not like the form factor at all. It was too huge. It was just a pain to carry around.
Then you should be excited about iPhone 13 mini, right?
No, not really. Let me get to my point, Morgan. I'm currently using the 11, like I've mentioned, and this is the perfect size for me. It is big enough, but it has so much screen real estate because of the disappearance of the home button, right? But in the 11th generation of iPhone, the 11 Pro has a slightly larger screen size than the 11, despite being a smaller package altogether. I think it was like what, probably half an inch smaller in terms of the total size of the phone. And I actually held an i11 Pro before. I've tried using it for a bit in the Apple Store in Osaka. It's very.
Wait. You meant 11 Pro Max,
No,
right?
no, no, 11 Pro, just Pro. I will never refer to the Max because the Max is. I am not interested in the Max at all.
Sorry, iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro. The Pro is smaller than 11, right?
Yes, the overall size is smaller, but like I mentioned, it's like probably zero point 0.5 inches smaller. But the screen is technically bigger than the 11
All right.
by a fraction. I can't remember the exact specification, but it's just a touch bigger than the 11. Of course, on top of being OLED, etc., etc. In any case, I really like the 11 Pro's form factor. It feels nicer on the hand, probably because of the stainless steel construction. But I am very fine with the 11 and 11 Pro. I don't think I need a smaller phone or a larger phone. I think the 11 is just the sweet spot. And I have not compared the screen size between the 13 and the 13 Pro. But I suspect if we follow Apple's design philosophy and language, it should be sort of the same. I don't know. Maybe I would like the iPhone Mini, the 13 Mini. But at this point in time, I have no qualms with my 11 at all. So whereas like the 7 Plus, I distinctively remember hating using the 7 Plus because it was so huge at times. But the 11, I had no problems with my 11. I have no problems with my 11.
So just now you asked the question about what's the difference between the regular 13 and 13 Pro, right? One of the biggest differentiator is the Pro motion. So you will get that 120 hertz sweet 120 refresh rate on the iPhone 13
Yes,
Pro.
yes, you're right, you're right.
If I remember, you have an iPad Pro, right? With the 120 hertz difference, right?
I had an iPad Pro, correct? The first generation iPad Pro. So yes, I had experienced ProMotion before, and yeah, you're right. ProMotion was a game changer. I would say that was my first time with a high refresh rate screen, and it was a game changer. Needless to say, everything just seemed nicer, better, much more buttery smooth. And if you go to YouTube, if you search YouTube from like I don't know 4 or 5 years back, everybody was raving over it, like from MKBHD to I don't know every tech YouTuber were raving like, oh, this is so buttery smooth. So ProMotion really is a game changer, and yeah, actually because of that, I would probably just go for the 13 Pro, just for that ProMotion display.
But remind me again, for the iPad, right? Do they have adaptive refresh rate?
That one I can't remember. I don't think so. Because from what I can recall, everything seemed just buttery smooth all the time.
Because it's all fixed on 120 hertz, right?
Yes, I believe so.
For this new 13 Pro, since it's using an OLED panel, and I think they are able to do that adaptive refresh rate.
Yeah, from 10 hertz to 120 hertz. It scales out according to the activity that you are using, the apps that you're using. So it's pretty cool. That is actually pretty cool. So that means, because the worry of at least this was a few years back, the worry of like the argument of a high refresh screen is that it will consume double the battery life, right? Because you are refreshing pixels at twice the rate. So obviously,
Yep.
it would use up much more battery, right? So with this adaptive refresh rate, this essentially no longer becomes a problem. So, well, to be fair, let's not give Apple, all the accolades here because this has been done on other phones, Android phones for years now at this point. So, welcome to the party, Apple.
But the interesting thing is that even with Apple introducing adaptive refresh rate, it actually increases the battery life.
It actually increases the battery life.
So
Oh,
it actually
okay.
you have a battery life improvement. Like for example, for the Pro Max, right, the big fat one, right, you get actually 2.5 hours more battery life than last year's model.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, but that's always the thing, right? Like, it's a new chipset. Oh, I guess this is a good segue into their new chipset, lah. But like the A15, right?
Yeah,
But
the A15 Bionic, I think.
yeah, but I don't know. Again, I'm not a hardware engineer or whatever, but one can make the argument if they didn't support ProMotion, let's just say, they could potentially have a much higher battery life than just 2.5. So yeah, basically I'm trying to highlight is that just because they had ProMotion doesn't mean they also had higher battery life at the same time. It's just that they probably chucked in a bigger battery or the processor is just much more efficient. It's likely the latter, but yeah.
No, the battery size did improve a bit. I mean, like, the size increased a bit. So it's a bit of both.
So I dare say if maybe without ProMotion, if they stuck to a fixed refresh rate, the default refresh rate, battery life might be higher because at the end of the day, to adapt between the variable refresh rate would require processing power still, negligible amount I would guess, but it still requires processing power, and therefore that requires battery as well. So it all ties in together. But still, yeah, I would agree with you. It's still a impressive feat lah, to say the least.
What else? Like that lor. Camera nice lor. S year lor. No, I don't know. Somehow this year the Mini impressed me more than the Pro. I don't know. It's more like because last year the sensor shift, right? Are you familiar with the sensor shift on the camera?
No, I am not up to date with the iPhone since I bought my 11 because I just didn't care, if I'm very honest.
So for the sensor shift, it's like a mechanical part in the camera where it stabilizes your phone. So you're able to take more stable photos, and it actually helps you to hold it steady when you're taking night shots. That's why you're able to take better night photos. So because it's mechanical, right? So it needs that space. So I understand why it's exclusively on the Max version for last year. And for this year, they actually make this available on the Mini. So I think that's the one thing that really surprised me. That wow, like they can find space and cramp inside the Mini with this sensor shift.
Is it possible it's a software? I'm not sure because I'm not
No,
very.
it is a
It's a
hardware. It's a
hardware
hardware.
thing? Okay. Because it's
Yep.
the same like the portrait mode. Remember back in the 7 Plus? The reason why 7 Plus
Yeah.
had portrait mode was because it has the dual lens setup, whereas 7 only had a single lens setup. But then, and future iterations of the iPhone, portrait mode became the de facto standard through a software hack. Well, ever since I guess the 10, there has been always two lenses. So, but yeah, my point stand that it if you're sure that it's a mechanical thing, then yeah, that's pretty impressive to be able to miniaturize a component that they couldn't last year and put it in this year's Mini. Then
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. So yeah, do you recommend people to get the Mini for this year after?
you know the episode of the title of this episode should be you should get the iPhone 13 mini because this just sounds like you're trying to endorse, trying to push you're just trying to push the 13 mini on everybody, you know. My answer is I don't know, Morgan, because I have not touched the mini.
All right.
On paper, yeah, I guess it sounds interesting, but and it is the cheaper option, you know, cheapest option,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It really depends, right?
Okay.
Personally, I would say, yeah, why not? You save money. Yeah, if okay, this and this advice has been basically everybody know about this advice at this point. If it's your first foray into an iPhone, you know, you're moving from an Android or God knows what OS into, you know, and you're thinking of getting an iPhone, right? Yes.
Yep.
Truly, any iPhone, any of the latest gen iPhone would be great for you. But if you are upgrading, you know, then the question becomes more complicated, right? Are you upgrading from a 12? Are you upgrading from 11, 10, 7, you know, etc., etc. If you are, my rule of thumb is if if you're not at least 3 generations behind the current iPhone, you probably should not upgrade. You should just stick with whatever you have. And this is especially true for this year's iPhone lineup. It's just minimal. If like you mentioned, this year is an S year for the iPhone, but it is a very weak S year. Sure, miniaturization, you know, the whole sensor shift, whatever. That's okay. I'll grant you that. But really, Morgan, who actually used that? You know, especially
No, it's invisible.
okay, yeah.
You don't have to. Yeah, you just take a photo and it does its
Correct.
work.
From a night photography, I guess. But number one, we are still amidst a pandemic. At least in Malaysia, who is going out taking photos at
Alright.
night is one thing. But even then, right? Even then, let's assume users from America or whatever. It's I don't know. Is it worth getting? Is it worth upgrading to this iPhone? I don't know. If really night shift is all they have, and I wanted to touch a bit on the chipset before we end the iPhone segment. I wanted to get a touch on the
Alright.
chipset because I was scrolling Twitter and this I think I can't remember the developer's name, but he's a prominent Mac OS, iOS. He's a developer. He shared an article from Semi Analysis, and about so this is the title of the article. I'm actually reading it right now. It's like Apple CPU gains grind to a halt and the future looks dim as the impact from the CPU engineer exodus to Nuvia and Rivos starts to bleed in. So TLDR or TLDH, there is a brain drain that happened in Apple since 2019. And all their top silicon engineers, the CPU architects and engineers, have left the company and joined other ventures, essentially. So if you actually look at the the presentation deck, for the iPhone 13, note that when they compare the CPU speed, right, they put there 50% faster CPU speed versus the competition. Right?
Alright.
They have not done this before. Or rather, I don't know whether they've not done this before, but they usually say like 2x faster than previous generation, blah, 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 right? They always like to compare against themselves because to them, they are the standard already, right? So it's
Yeah.
curious why they would put this graphic that 50% faster CPU versus competition. And it's because the CPU architecture of this year, it's just a bit juiced up from last year. It's barely an increment, you know.
But Jason, you have to understand is because right now we are in the midst of a pandemic and also a chip shortage situation around the world. That contributes, right?
This has nothing to do with chip manufacturing. It's architecture, right?
But
It's architecture. But
because
even
because
then,
you're
even
because
then, right? As an end
right.
consumer, I shouldn't have to care about all of this. I shouldn't have to care if there's a chip shortage, if there's a if whatever. But as an end consumer, all I care about is what is the end product that's coming to me. And the end product that's coming to me this year seems weak sauce. It just doesn't. It's just not worth it. Why should I shell out? Mind you, I think the 13 Pro is the maxed out 13 Pro is what, 7,000 plus ringgit. You can get a MacBook for that, man. Why would I spend so much money on a iPhone?
But nobody is asking you to buy the 1 TB iPhone, man.
Okay, fair. But even then, right? Even if you get the entry level mini, what is that, like 3.8, 3.5?
Yeah.
That is still a lot of money for such an incremental upgrade when I could just snag a last generation iPhone for cheaper. You know, I could just get it secondhand, or probably I don't know if the iPhone 12 will still be sold on the Apple Store. I'm not sure about that. But my question stands. Why should I get the 13 with such...
But because I feel that you're a bit unfair because you're comparing with people who has an iPhone 12. But for people who has an iPhone 10 or a 10R, it's like a big leap forward, right? I mean, like, Apple isn't, how to say, it's been a while where Apple increments their performance consistently. They are not the ones that make giant leaps in between generations.
Okay,
so it shouldn't come as a surprise.
And I understand that, but like, okay, so I'm not comparing. Your assumption is wrong that I'm comparing this against iPhone 12 users. No, I'm comparing it this. Why would anybody get a 13 when they can get a cheaper 12?
Hey, what kind of stupid argument is that, man? Then
No.
when you are 12, then you ask like, why not get a cheaper 11? Then when you're 11, why not get a cheaper 10? It's the same thing, man.
What? No, it's like, okay, 11 to a 12, or 11 to a 13, right? Let's compare 11 to 13. The jump is big, right? So you compare next to the lineup, right? So obviously, you look at iPhone 12 and you look at iPhone 13. What is the gain that you will get from an iPhone 13? And is it worth the price? If you break it down to a cost analysis breakdown, is it worth the price per dollar? The performance per dollar of an iPhone 13 compared to an iPhone 12? Are you actually getting your money worth out of that? And I personally don't think so. I think you're better off just getting an iPhone 12, which will probably be cheap. You can probably snag a cheaper iPhone 12 on the second-hand market, and usually iPhones are pretty well kept. You know, they're usually in pristine condition.
Have a long lifespan of software support, right?
Yeah.
Because of their good architecture. That's why like you keep contradicting yourself, man.
What?
You're like
how is that contradicting with the 13?
No. The argument you have is that the architecture has been slowing down and not really big improvement. But last year was great.
I'm not saying, Morgan, you are okay. You are sounding like a fanboy right now, dude. I've not said the architecture is slowing down. I'm saying that the increase in performance from the 12 to the 13 is marginal. So why should you pay top dollar for a marginal increase when you can get a last generation, which is the iPhone 12 lineup, for lesser? I don't know how much lesser. You have to look at the second-hand market, but you can get it for lesser. So why should you pay top dollar for a marginal increase?
Right.
If you are coming from if you're comparing, between, I would say, okay, what was a huge generation leap? 8 and 10, right? 8 and 10. If you're from an iPhone 7 and you want to jump to either 8 or a 10, right? Imagine you are in the year 2017, 2018. 10 was a game changer. The screen changed, the design language changed, the battery changed, the processor changed, everything changed. If you break a performance to dollar, or I guess a value to dollar breakdown, it makes perfect sense to buy an iPhone 10. It's expensive, but it makes perfect sense to buy iPhone 10 because it's So much better. It's a revolutionary change. Then you compare it to like, you compare the 10 to the 10S, right? Why would you buy the 10S? Would you buy a 10S, Morgan? By argument of this being an S generation, right? If you're jumping from a iPhone 7 or an iPhone 8, and your only option was a 10 or a 10S, and you could get the 10 at a cheaper price, would you get the 10 or 10S?
The reason why I said always get the latest hardware, because like for example, you're getting this year hardware versus last year hardware, because when you're getting this year's hardware, you will get that extra year of support, versus if you buy last year's hardware, it's 1 year. It's like it's 1 year already, and it's like obsolete.
Okay, so
in a long term.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair, but let me ask you this: how long was the iPhone SE before it got obsolete? How long did Apple support iPhone SE? Would you
7 years, 8 years,
8 years, right?
7 years, 8 years.
Do you think anybody will use a phone for more than 5 years, let alone 8 years? They of course they are lah, right? But I'm talking about like the vast majority. Would do you think people will use a phone more than 5 years?
Yeah, fair. I mean, like 4 years would consider be very good already.
And do you think buying an iPhone 12 now, and in 4 years' time, you would gain such drastic performance hit that it will shatter? Mind you, this is just a one generation gap. Yeah, 12 to 13. Yeah. Do you think that buying a 12 and using it for 4 years, you would feel like, man, I should have gotten the 13 lah. The performance hit is unbearable now. Yeah, so that's my argument. If you can get it cheaper, unless you're telling me they're both at the same price, then obviously it's a dumb argument to begin with. Just get a 13 if they are the same price. But chances are they're not. Chances are on the second-hand market, or even on the first-hand market, or on the brand new market, you can probably snag a 12 for a cheaper price because it's no longer the new thing. Correct. And is it objectively slower, dated compared to 13? Yes. But by how much? And that's the question I'm asking, So, by all means, if the person buying that wants to buy an iPhone, they want the best of the best, by all means, get the 13. But I'm more interested in what the 14 brings. I think that would be a upgrade that, that truly warrants, me to just swipe my credit card, just throw my wallet at Apple. But that's just my opinion.
Let's talk about another mini, the iPad mini.
Okay, so this one, I fully agree. Everybody should just get the latest iPad mini. As a matter of fact,
oh really?
You
surprised me, man.
My dad. Oh no, because like, if I'm not mistaken, it's what was it? It bumped up to an A14, right? The chip.
No. Sorry. The iPad mini is using the latest one, the A15, the same with the iPhone 13.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's even, put it this way. Okay, I know we're supposed to get into what's the changes and everything, but I'll just put it here. In the beginning, I think everybody, if you got the money, just get the latest iPad mini. Because the old iPad mini is 2 years already at this point, 3 years almost, I guess. And I felt so bad because literally just 2 days ago, my dad was asking me, hey, what should we get, mom? Should we get her an iPad mini or just the iPad, the normal iPad? And
the regular one.
Yeah, and I completely forgotten that there might be an iPad mini announcement at this Apple event. So I was telling him, just get the iPad lah, just get the iPad. And I completely regret that now because looking at the iPad mini now, I'm like, I potentially screwed my mom over. So,
well, the script totally flipped right now, where I was talking about like how great 13 mini is. Right now you're talking about how iPad mini is.
You are biased with that sensor shift lah, bro.
No, but
you are just biased.
I actually have a question about why do people need iPad mini? Why not just get the regular one? Because the regular one is cheaper. Yeah. Now I'm gonna talk about the value. It's using
this is such a weird podcast. But okay, go ahead.
Because it's using A13 Bionic. I think it's the same chipset as iPhone 11. That's actually not bad. Why do you need iPad mini with fancy new design? Yes. Oh shit. Oh man, we have total role reversal. Oh my god, what the hell is happening?
Oh man. But unlike you, I'm not a fanboy. Like, go on. You can go ahead with your arguments, Morgan. I'll listen to it with an open mind.
All right. Ah, shit. Now I'm like repeating your stuff, but I'm talking about the iPad.
Okay, so I guess your point is like, oh, for the same money, why don't you just get yeah, slightly dated, but a better value, right?
Yeah, because the regular iPad sports an 10.12 inch of screen,
Okay.
and the mini is like 8.9. And if the mini is cheaper, then yeah, sure, fine. The mini, I mean, like, it's your entry iPad. But that's not the case. The iPad mini is
It's
slightly more expensive than the
it
regular
is
iPad.
it's 3K for the 256.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yep. It's
And
almost 3K, almost 3K.
And I think the only differentiating about why do you get the iPad mini, like why iPad mini still have a place in the world right now, is just because that form factor is like whatever I brought up during the 13 mini point just now, that you're able to squeeze that much technology with the new form design, the laminated screen in the iPad mini form factor.
The only reason why I would even suggest to get a iPad mini, right, is that so unlike the iPhone, we are not exactly spoiled for choice in terms of like the generation. Number one, the upgrade cycle. iPhone is every year, so you can count on that. But iPad is a bit more hit or miss. Generally it's 2 or 3 years, but it's a bit more hit or miss. And I'm saying this from I'm well aware it is a bias because I personally love the form factor of the iPad mini, and yes, you could get the iPad, but it would be a different form factor, and it would be a performance difference, a 2 generation chip difference,
Yep.
right? And unfortunately, if there was an intermediary iPad mini, right, like an iPad mini with a A13, A14 chip, then I would say forget about this current iPad mini. It's not worth it.
All right.
But for some people, okay lah, I want to say the current iPad mini, or I guess the last iPad mini, the one with the A12 chip, it's not exactly dated, it's still moving. To be fair, I think I had the A8, A10 iPad mini, which is like, I basically had an iPad mini that's 7, 8 years old, and I gave it to my mom, right? And it's still going strong, just that the screen sensor is a bit wonky now. The capacitive touch is a bit wonky, right?
All right.
So basically what I'm trying to get at is that if people get the previous generation iPad mini, they'll probably be fine as well, But the previous generation iPad mini to this generation iPad mini, the new one, they're 3 generations apart.
Yep.
And I think that's worthy an upgrade. Yes, they could go for the iPad, the one as you mentioned, but it's a different
The regular
the regular iPad, but it's a different form factor, and it is still not a real upgrade. I would say it's not a real upgrade because it's still dated hardware, and unfortunately, we're not talking about 1 year difference. We're talking about 2, 3 years of difference, and that's a lot. So it's not exactly an apple comparison to the iPhone because the iPhone changes every year, and we're comparing a 12 to a 13, right? So and we know for a fact the next upgrade cycle for an iPhone will be next year. For the iPad mini or iPad, we just don't know when exactly they will come, if it will ever come. For all you know, next generation Apple say, yeah, you know what, we're cutting the iPad out of the circulation, we're just going to go with the iPad Air. It's possible. Apple has done this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I said, I'm well aware that when my endorsement for the iPad mini is because of my I guess experience with the iPad mini, and also this upgrade cycle, the refresh cycle is just too long.
All right. I think I finally know why both of us differ so much in terms of how we see value. I think when it comes to iPhone, because it's the one thing that you carry the most around, it's the one thing that you rely
Okay,
the
that's
most.
fair.
Hence, I put more value in always getting the latest hardware. Where in the iPad, it's a secondary device. So it's
Okay.
if you can compromise, this is a place that you can compromise. So what if you get a 2-year-old hardware in a very dated design?
That's fair. That's
I
fair.
think that's fine because it's a secondary device anyways. And the phone, it's more prominent. Like you use it, like it's you see where I'm coming from, right?
Oh no, I see where you're coming from. Okay, so if you want to plot
Yep.
the graph from so there's another variable in the mix in the case of the phone, whereby is the usage time, the contact time, essentially. In that sense, so time is a factor in this, the new variable. In that sense, then yes, I would say it's worthwhile if you're upgrading, from an 11. If you're upgrading from a 12, I say just forget it. Just wait for the 14, to be very, 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 very frank. But if you're upgrading for even 11, I'm like, But if you're upgrading from a 10, like in the case of our dear co-host Adam, if he's coming from an XS, then yes, I guess from in that sense, sure. Why the heck not? Just get the latest iPhone, because like you mentioned, it's the device that you use all the time.
Yeah.
I would still say if you can wait, just wait another year. But then again, that's the same for every tech, right? If you can wait, just wait another year.
Since I don't know, man. I don't know when's the next iPad Mini is gonna be announced.
Oh no lah, what the heck? No way, man. So okay, some people might not know, but like my daily driver is an M1 MacBook Air, right? And for Morgan, I think for your case, you are using a 16-inch or what's your daily driver?
The 16-inch MacBook Pro 2019, I think.
Should be lah. Our co-host Adam uses an iPad Pro as his daily driver, and as much as I want to love the idea of the iPad, I cannot see it. Okay, it's priced so expensively that I cannot see it as just a secondary device. Especially like the iPad Mini, like I say, 3K for 256 gigs, right? That's insane. But at the same time, if it is not fully fledged enough that it can be a daily driver for me, at least for my case. Back then, what the iPad had going for it, or rather iPad OS had going for it, is great battery life and great portability, right?
Yeah.
But the M1 crushed all of that. I'm currently using my own personal MacBook Air for development for my company. But while running emulators, Android emulators, I am able to get an entire work day worth of battery from my M1 Air. So I really don't see how, at least for my case, I don't see how an iPad would fit my lifestyle. An iPad is, I would say, a very casual device, in my opinion. So I would never get it.
A secondary device just to play Civ
Voila.
5.
Bro. Yeah, a $3,000 machine if I wanted a $3,000 machine, I just get a mini ITX desktop just to play Civ 5.
It's different. You can Civ 5 on the iPad Mini on the toilet.
Wow, yeah, dropping bombs. Dropping bombs while you're dropping bombs, right, Morgan? So, no, I cannot lah. It is too expensive to be a secondary device. However, for people like my mom, like my dad, this is perfect. It's expensive, yes, but it does everything they need to do, and it does it well.
Because it's the only computer they have.
Correct. Well, actually, they have a old MacBook Air lah, but that is so old that it's still using the MagSafe 2 charger. So yeah, so I would not get the iPad Mini, personally speaking. But for everybody else, yeah, for students, for casual users, or maybe not even casual users, but heavy content consumption people, I would definitely recommend them to get the iPad Mini.
So the last thing we're going to talk about is Apple Watch.
Apple Watch
Series 7. I really can't comment much about this because
neither can I.
Because I personally don't own an Apple Watch, and I've been planning to get one for my dad this year because Malaysia has just approved the ECG feature for Apple Watch, I think a few months ago. And I was reluctant to get the Apple Watch in Malaysia was that you've paid this price, but there's this feature you can't use. Like you have the hardware, but you can't use.
Wow, that's probably the most Chinese uncle thing. Like,
right?
Pay so much money, pay so much money. I cannot use all. What's the point?
Yeah.
But no,
exactly.
I actually agree with you. Yes, it's a shame. It's really a shame.
And finally, Malaysia, the Ministry of Health approved ECG use on watch, and I feel like although the Apple Watch refresh this year, it's kind of incremental, bigger battery, bigger screen, and a slightly curved design, new design for the screen. But I felt like Apple is dominating the market, in terms of smartwatch. And yeah, like if you don't like Apple Watch, who you gonna go with? I think Samsung is a very distant second, I would say.
I just want to to have a little throwback to a time where the smartwatch market was vibrant, and I was just to say that I was and is still an avid supporter of Pebble. Fortunately,
Ah.
they crapped a bit lah. Let's just put it that way. It's such a shame. I was actually a backer of the Pebble 2. Do you know that?
The 2 is the one that they didn't announce, right? They
Correct.
didn't release, right?
They didn't release, correct.
Yep.
Because I backed
The first one.
Did I back the Pebble one? I can't remember if I backed the Pebble one or I bought the Pebble one. Either way, I got the first Pebble, and that's where I fell in love with smartwatches. And the Pebble was very, very well made. And it's sad. It's sad that Apple is the dominating force in the smartwatch market. Sure, there are some Android Wear devices, but let's be honest, they kind of suck.
Yeah,
As
but
an Android developer, I would say they suck so bad. So
yeah, and Google has some renewed interest with partnering with Samsung. I think a few months ago during Google I/O, they announced that they're gonna overhaul the whole Google Wear OS and gonna partner up with Samsung. And even if if it's a productive partnership, but it will take a few years in order to see it into fruition, I would say. So yeah.
we will see. We'll see. But I actually own an Apple Watch Series 3, just the normal non-cellular version, 42 millimeters, blah blah blah. And I've been looking to upgrade, not for the reason you might think. It's just because the battery is dying. Just the curse of the lithium-ion batteries. They degrade over time, and my Apple Watch, which could barely hold 2 days worth of charge, now can barely hold a single day of charge, even with minimal. If I actually work out with my watch, which I do, I jog with my watch, I do calisthenics with my watch, it can barely last half a day if I actually turn on the activity tracking, the heart rate monitoring and everything. So that's the only reason why I want to upgrade.
But you're still getting Wear OS 7, right? The latest software, right?
Correct.
It's still part of the lineup, right? Yep.
Correct. So I'm going to go back to my my argument for the iPhone, the iPhone 13 versus 12 argument, right, is even more prominent here with the Apple Watch. Apple Watch, I seriously do not see any reason for anybody to upgrade. It's what I wanted to say until ECG became a thing, But even then, do you really care about ECG? At least, touch wood lah, touch wood. But like our age group, right, mid-20s, mid-20s to early 40s. I mean, okay, maybe not early 40s, but early 40s, you are slowly getting into, health risk territory. But like mid-30s, do you really need an ECG? For the vast majority of us, do you really need ECG? Is it a feature worth getting? And then you want to talk about like always screen on. Yeah, the latest Apple Watch, the screen is much bigger, it's brighter, blah, blah, blah. But do you really need that out of a watch? A smartwatch?
If there's a non-ECG with a cheaper variant, then I would get that. But that's not an option, right? I mean, that option is kind of like the Apple Watch SE. But
correct.
You also have to sacrifice the always on, which I think is a very big deal breaker for a lot of people.
Is it? What makes you think so?
The always on feature?
Yeah.
Just now you mentioned that you were a very early backer of Pebble, right?
Correct.
And I haven't mentioned about I'm actually also an early backer of the Moto 360.
Yes. I remember seeing you wearing it. Yes.
Yeah, the first round Android Wear that hypes everything up.
Yep.
About Android entering the smartwatch.
Correct.
And I do notice that I don't use the watch as much because it's not always because the screen is not always on. So you have to do this weird gesture in order to brighten it up, like to active the screen, right? And that's a very weird gesture to do from time to time. And it doesn't work as well on the Moto 360. And
okay. No, that's a fair point.
And the always on can make that glanceability a lot better. Like for example, when there's a new message, you can just glance it rather than try to flick it, and people will know that you're checking your watch.
Right. Okay.
So I feel like Yeah, it's a quality of life improvement, but it's a really good quality life of improvement.
So as an Apple Series 3 owner, so I remember when I first got the Apple Series 3, right? I never wish, and mind you, this is coming from Pebble, which has an e-ink display that is literally always on, yeah.
24/7
24/7
with a
because
one week of battery life, right? Or is it 2 weeks?
oh my god, don't even mention it, man. I miss my Pebble so much.
Is it 2 weeks or a week?
1 week, but I think managed to stretch it to like close to 12 days at one point. So yeah.
Wow. All right.
If it's really a standby, right, you don't use it, notifications don't come pinging in, it lasts quite a while, dude. But I digress. As a Series 3 user, I have never had issues of, oh man, I wish this display, it was always on or whatever. Because, and this was during the early days of owning the Series 3. It's because the minute you flick your wrist to glance at it, and it's quite a very natural flick. I don't know about the Moto 360, but the Apple Series 3 is just a normal wrist turn, just a wrist turn, and it will show you the time. Yeah, it's very discreet, it's very nice. Nowadays it's not as reliable anymore, I think, because it's getting slow and everything. The battery is kind of crappy now, but I never had that problem. And honestly, if you ask me, if Apple just ditched the always on thing, they could probably squeeze much more battery life out of the Series 5? When was always on introduced? Series 5, Series 6?
5.
Yeah.
5.
So I would rather have more battery life, to be very frank with you. If they could increase the battery life to a week, I would gladly sacrifice always on.
It's a switch that you can just flick it off, right?
Oh, is it? So there is an
Yeah.
actual
Yeah. Happy, right? So
I
I
did
guess
not know that.
you're getting a Series 7 for Christmas, right?
Okay, so no, because okay, I remember how in like our the software that we use that episode, I think that's what episode 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about how some some software is not suitable to be on the phone, right? Like imagine having a mobile version of You Need a Budget. It's stupidity in my opinion. A phone should not be able to do so many things, and I believe a smartwatch should not have to do so many things as well. So to me,
All right.
this is my use case of a smartwatch: activity tracking, reliable activity tracking, notifications, and maybe some media controls. Even then, rarely, right? I think these are the things that should matter. Apple smartwatch. Now, I don't know whether Malaysia actually supports Apple Pay. Maybe a few select places.
No, Malaysia banks doesn't support Apple Pay, but we have the hardware to support Apple Pay because
Correct.
it's just basically piggybacking on Visa PayWave.
Right, correct. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not let's just put it, it's not a ubiquitous adoption of Apple Pay in what. So, but I think that is a good feature to have if you are, in Singapore or whatever, because I actually seen the use case in Japan, and it's very cool that you can go to any convenience store and just pay using your watch. I think that's super cool. That's super handy. And you can even forego having the metro card, the train card, and just use your
Yep.
Apple Watch to tap into the station. That is super useful in my opinion. But unfortunately, we don't have that. So if we have that, by all means, I want to say everybody should get the latest Apple Watch, but even the previous generations all have this NFC support or Apple Pay support. So
Yep.
I don't know. So I'm basically what I'm trying to say is I'm doubling down on what I mentioned about the iPhone 13. Like, if there is absolutely nothing about the Apple Watch Series 7 that you absolutely need, and honestly, there really isn't, because Series 6, Series 5 have it more or less, then just don't get the Series 7. It's just a waste of money.
Yeah. You can get anything as long as it's not Series 3.
Yeah.
You know, right? Apple is still selling Series 3 today.
Exactly. And yeah, and it's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing. And it's like what, 1,000 ringgit? I know that the Apple Watch SE is like 800 ringgit, which is in my opinion a steal. It's pretty good. I would say Apple Watch, right, is for people who wants reliable activity tracking, because I found that the activity tracking is pretty reliable and it's good. It really helps me to be more active in my life, because it's not just the watch, it's the companion app on the iOS device. Of course, this is the assumption that people are using an iOS device. The companion fitness app on the iOS device is it actually spurs me to work out, to be more active in my life.
All right.
But yeah, honestly, I don't see a reason to get the Series 7.
You don't see a reason.
I don't see a
Or
reason to get a
you
Series 7. Yep.
even coming from a Series 3.
Nope, nada. Because again, the same argument applies. If I want ECG, I'll just get a Series 5 or Series 6 if I have no choice, you know?
I see. All right, right. Yeah, because since you're still getting the latest Apple Watch software updates
Exactly.
anyways, so I feel like, yeah, it's still not obsolete.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
If you can get an Apple Watch for 60% cheaper, hell, why not, you know? You just get the previous generation. But if it's like 10, 20%, 30%, yeah, I guess just get the latest. If this is your first foray into Apple Watch, then sure, get the latest one. It has a bigger screen after all. It's pretty.
Yep. Cool.
Okay, so I guess this basically wraps up the Apple event episode for the Rojak Tech podcast. You know, we've discussed about the iPhone 13. Things got contentious for a minute there between getting an iPhone 12 or an
Oh,
iPhone
man.
13. But hey, that's what, if everybody agrees, if everybody else, this will be pretty boring, right? Then we also talk about the iPad, the iPad mini, whether it's worth getting or should you get an iPad, our opinion is that, whatever floats your boat. And then we
Yeah.
talked about the Apple Watch. Again, whatever floats your boat, but we generally lean on getting a second-hand watch if you can, if you're new to the Apple Watch system and the price difference is 50-60%, then sure, get a second-hand one. But if it's your first time getting an Apple Watch, then and the price difference of a second-hand watch, a last generation watch, is 10-20%, just splurge for the latest Series 7. It's pretty anyway.
And it's gonna last quite some time because since you take a look at Series 3, it's been like 4 years already.
4 years, yeah. I'm using my Series 3 for almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
So
And when you can buy a Series 7 without worrying in for the next 4 years.
exactly. And yeah, I think that basically wraps up our hot takes on the latest Apple event.
Yeah. So if you guys like what we are doing, it will help us out a lot if you guys can follow us on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcast. So I guess I'll catch you next time, Jason.
Yeah, I'll see you next time too, Morgan, and catch all of you listeners in the next episode.
All right. See ya.